There is something about being talked about in a room you were never invited into that you feel before you ever know it happened. It arrives as a shift in temperature, the way a conversation changes when you walk in, not dramatically, not in a way you can point to and name, but in the particular way of people who have recently been saying something they would not say in front of you. A certain quality of eye contact that goes slightly past you rather than landing on you. A warmth that is performing itself rather than coming from somewhere real. A silence where there used to be ease. You noticed. You probably told yourself you were imagining it. You were not imagining it. There was a room, a real one, with real people in it, gathered with a specific and deliberate purpose. Your name was in that room, not as a passing mention, not the way names drift through ordinary conversation, but with weight, with history, with the particular tension that only exists when people know they are discussing something that would not survive being said out loud in full daylight. They were careful. They were careful about who sat in that room. Careful about the language they used to wrap what they were doing in something that felt procedural or protective or simply the way things are done. They wore certain faces for the duration of the meeting and prepared different ones for the next time they saw you. They believed the room was sealed. They believed the silence they had maintained for this long could be maintained indefinitely. What they did not account for was the one thing no sealed room has ever been able to hold, the weight of what they actually knew. Because here is the thing about people who carry a truth that does not belong to them. It is not a neutral experience. It lives in the body. It shows up in the quality of sleep, in the specific kind of tiredness that comes not from doing too much but from holding too much, in the way a person's voice changes slightly when they get close to the edge of what they have agreed not to say. And in that room, at some point in a conversation that began with such confidence, one person got close to that edge, not because they were weak, because they were human, because what had been done to you, the opportunities quietly redirected, the doors carefully closed, the narrative constructed and maintained to keep you in a particular box, was sitting in the room with them like a physical presence, not as abstraction, as fact, as something documented and real and identifiable, carrying the fingerprints of choices that had no legitimate justification beneath the language used to justify them. And the weight of that, the specific, unignorable weight of knowing that what was being done was wrong, began to show on someone's face in a way they could not fully manage. Their hands, maybe, or the quality of their silence, or the moment they stopped meeting certain eyes and started looking at a point slightly above everyone's heads. Something broke open that was never supposed to break in that room. And when one person in a closed system cracks, the pressure that they were carrying redistributes. Suddenly, everyone in the room is holding more than they agreed to carry when they walked through the door. The confident language that opened the meeting becomes careful. The eye contact starts breaking down. What was still to feel impenetrable begins to feel, from the inside, like something that has already been compromised. You have felt this without having words for it. That shift in the atmosphere around you. The strange pressure that is different from the old pressure. The one that used to feel suffocating and heavy and like something pressing down. This is different. This feels like something is about to give, like the air before a storm that does not destroy but clears. The kind that moves through a landscape and leaves everything quieter and cleaner on the other side. That feeling is real. It is not hope distorting your perception. It is your nervous system accurately reading something that has already shifted in the hidden, before it has fully arrived in the visible. Here is the deep realization that I think changes everything about how you understand what has been happening. The people in that room made one foundational error that made every other error inevitable. They looked at you and saw something small enough to manage, something that fit inside the story they needed to tell. They assessed the situation, assessed you, and concluded that you were containable, that your name could be handled, that the narrative around you was theirs to own and maintain indefinitely. That assessment was wrong in a way that is almost breathtaking in its inaccuracy, because what they were actually dealing with, what they sat in a room and talked about with such confidence, was someone whose depth, whose resilience, whose particular quality of quiet and patient truth-bearing was so far beyond what they had accounted for that the entire structure of their certainty was built on a miscalculation. They thought they were managing a situation. They were disturbing something that could not ultimately be disturbed. And the moment the truth of that began pressing through the surface of what they had constructed, in the crack that appeared on someone's face in that room, in the detail that surfaced that carried your name on it, and could not be softened into something neutral, no matter how careful the language. Their fortress did not just weaken. It became the thing that undid them. I want to stop here and say something directly to you, because I think you have been carrying a particular burden alongside everything else. The burden of wondering whether staying quiet was the right choice, whether you should have fought harder, spoken louder, demanded that someone look at you and acknowledge what was being done, whether your dignity in the face of all of it was wisdom or simply another form of loss, whether the people who watched what was happening and said nothing needed to hear from you directly in order to finally understand. They did not. And this is the thing that matters most. Your silence was not passive. It was not defeat wearing a dignified face. It was the most active, most powerful choice available to you, even if it did not feel like power while you were living inside it. Because truth operating without the interference of defensiveness or reaction moves through people differently. It arrives without the noise that allows them to dismiss it. It settles into places that argument never reaches. You did not fight the story, and because you did not fight it, the universe stepped into the space your restraint created and began doing something that exceeded what any defense of yours could have accomplished. The narrative left their hands, not in one dramatic moment, in the way that real things move, gradually at first, and then with a momentum that has nothing to do with anyone's management of it. People who had been given the curated, diminished version of you began to feel the gap between that version and something that did not quite fit inside it, something they could not fully articulate, but also could not comfortably ignore. Conversations began happening outside the room. Details surfaced in places they were never supposed to surface. People who had been quietly, half-consciously holding someone else's version of your story against you began to experience the particular discomfort of a picture that no longer adds up. And some people, the ones who reach out now with sudden warmth, with renewed interest, with a concern they were not demonstrating 6 months ago, you need to look at them clearly and carefully. Not all of them are coming from remorse. Genuine remorse is slow and heavy, and does not arrive primarily as a way of managing what someone is afraid you might do. It arrives as an undeniable internal weight. It shows up in someone asking about your healing rather than about what you know. It shows up in someone taking responsibility without redirecting the conversation toward their own complexity. What you may also encounter is damage control wearing the face of regret. People who are less troubled by what was done to you than by what it is about to cost them. You have been reading rooms your entire life, often in rooms that were doing everything possible to make you doubt what you were reading. Trust what you read. Something with your name on it is making its way back. An opportunity, an opening, something that had been quietly, deliberately moved out of your reach by hands that had no right to touch it. The fire that was started to burn your bridges has turned and is now illuminating the exact path that was supposed to remain dark. The people who close certain doors are watching those doors reopen and finding that they do not have the keys they thought they had. This is not poetic justice in the abstract sense. It is the specific, mechanical consequence of a system that was built on the suppression of something true. When the suppression fails, and it always eventually fails, what was held back returns with the accumulated force of everything that delayed it. What is coming back has been building pressure for a long time. Pay attention to the small things now, not the dramatic revelations. Those will come in their own time and their own form. But the texture of ordinary moments, which is where the real information always arrives first. Someone will say something to you that carries more beneath its surface than the tone suggests. An opportunity you were told was no longer available will quietly reappear. A detail will find its way into your hands. A document, a name, a sentence that hits with a weight disproportionate to its size. A person will show you a face you have not seen before, and whether that face is genuine or frightened, it will tell you something true. What changes in the visible is always a reflection of what has already moved in the hidden. And here is what I most want you to carry with you from all of this, because it is the thing that reframes everything. You were not buried, you were planted. The full weight of what was done, the closed rooms, the redirected opportunities, the managed narrative, the deliberate and sustained effort to keep you smaller than you are. None of it stopped you. It could not stop you, because what it was trying to stop was not something fragile. It was something growing, even in the dark, especially in the dark. The very attention they drew to what they called your limitations forced every person watching to look at something they did not intend to illuminate. Your steadiness, your refusal to become bitter, the way you moved through something that would have broken most people and came out the other side more clear, more grounded, more entirely yourself than when you went in. They thought they were writing the end of your story. They wrote your origin story instead. The meeting is over. The room has emptied, and what was set in motion inside it, the crack in the foundation, the truth that found the gap, the recognition that spread outward in ways no one in that room could manage or recall, is still moving. It does not need your urgency. It does not need you to chase it or announce it or force it into places faster than it is already going. It needs you clear, grounded, impossible to manipulate, and impossible to diminish. Present enough to recognize what is arriving when it arrives quietly, before it arrives loudly. Stay still enough to receive what is coming, because what was spoken about you in that sealed room, what they were so certain would define you, never actually had that power. What has always had the power to define you is exactly what they could not touch. And it is exactly what is being seen now, finally, in rooms you will actually be invited into.